Good afternoon and welcome to episode 10 of today's Air Defenders podcast. I'm your host, Amber Osei, Public Affairs Officer for the Air Defense Artillery School out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Our topic today is 14 uniform, doctrinal changes and its effects on operations. We will dive into some frequently asked questions from air defenders across the branch. Today's guests include Command Sergeant Major Giancarlo Macri, Command Sergeant Major of the Air Defense Artillery Branch, Sergeant Major Kevin Andrakowicz, who came over from 162nd at Fort Cavazos, Texas. This really is just a way for us to get it out there, the information. And Sergeant Major Macri, if you want to go into more about the Army force structure and kind of what happened in the last year, where we're at on it now, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing for the branch, what do you think about it?
Yeah, so every year, the Army does a total Army analysis, which is they look at the numbers, they see if they have the right amount of this type of capability, that type of capability, the right numbers in the formations, and then, once they're done with that meeting, then what ends up happening is they create the Army structure, and that's what the structure is, right? The R-struct. This last R-struct was good to us because we got a growth in our branch. So we grew, I think, about 38 or 42%, I believe, somewhere around there. Anyway, we grew a pretty good amount. And so that was important for us, right? Because all the combatant commanders want air defense, all the divisions want air defense, the corps want air defense. And so based off of the need of the commands out there and the units out there, in order, the air defense branch ended up growing, and that's why that force structure was important for us, so that we can support the maneuver units and the corps and multi-domain task force and the Guam defense system and all of that. So that's why it was important, and that's how we come up with the force structure. That's how the senior leaders and Congress come up with the force structure.
Okay, so Sergeant Major Andrakowicz, like we had kind of spoke before in the past, about the operational side of it. Obviously, Sergeant Major Macri, you just came from 10th, so you were on the operational side as well. And after being here in the schoolhouse, what do y'all think that what is coming down and what these institutions like our schoolhouse is trying to accomplish through training? Can y'all just talk a little bit about how that actually impacts the operational force?
Yeah, sure. Sergeant Major Macri, you want to take this first and then I'll jump in there?
Yeah, so basically when, we grew, and we're growing, right? And on top of the growing, there's a change in the weapon systems, right? So the integrated fire protection capability, you have the IBCS enabled Patriot and IFPC. You have the Sergeant Stout, the new short-range air defense vehicle with different increments of that, right? Different, some have certain capability, the others have a certain capability, and that's going to keep evolving. So what we're doing is, and what TRADOC is doing, and what the Army is doing is, they're actually trying to equip the institutional training base a little earlier than normal. Usually 50% of the operational force receives the equipment before they'll send it to the training brigade. But based off of the fact that we're moving so fast, they're starting to recognize that we have to get our equipment a little earlier here at the schoolhouse so that we can start training soldiers prior to getting to their units. And so we're currently changing our program of instructions. We're changing our non-commissioned officer academy program of instruction. We're creating a different type of master gunner to help keep up with all those changes in capability. And so, that's kind of, from my perspective, what's happening in the schoolhouse and how what we do is going to affect the operational force.
No, yeah, absolutely, Sergeant Major Macri. Yeah, the other point with the operational forces, so getting these folks as they go through the schoolhouse and they're educated on all the new systems and capabilities of these new systems, right? Putting them into the active duty force, right? Putting them out there in operational forces. This allows commanders, right, to exercise their non-commissioned officers a little bit more freely because they have all this knowledge built in the system, and it helps shape kind of the operational environment that we're working in right now. So, biggest piece, just leaving from an air defense battalion, right, that had a real world mission split between two COCOMs. We had an opportunity to work with the majority of these systems in both COCOMs, and what it does to the battlefield and what it allows commanders to do is extremely important. And the fact that we're, like Sergeant Major Macri said, we're putting so much emphasis into educating these folks ahead of it getting to the units, right? It's the impact it has to the units is exponential.
Okay, good. So, the changes start taking place. You start getting them into effect. And I know, like, even with some of the composite batteries, the idea of that, like, I know there's like a FY 2027 goal on it. So, I mean, could y'all give me some examples of some changes that, might have happened like recently, just within the last kind of months, that came from some of these efforts that you're putting into changing everything and actually seeing the change out there in the field?
Yeah, Amber, as far as some of the, so, my understanding on kind of here, just coming on board here in the Okada office, and what Okada has been able to do with both this 14 uniform program and then some of the, 600-25 updates, right? So it's just being started, and it will here in the near future, right? We haven't even had the first group of folks that have gone through the FSPC or the 14 uniform program graduate the schoolhouse and get out to the units. And I know everybody out there is kind of excited to see what this does. Biggest impact I see, right, most of these things that the Okada office and the TRADOC is doing that's going to have to the units is going to put more soldiers into the formation. And then, like Sergeant Major Macri, what he had talked about earlier with, these composite battalions and kind of moving to IBCS enabled and all these different weapon systems, is once they do that, the number of individuals it takes to run the equipment, right, and to cover the same amount of area actually gets dialed down just by a little bit. So what that does, right, with us continuing to put more air defenders into the operational forces out there, is it allows more air defense assets to be given to the various COCOM commanders. As it stands right now, air defense is wanted everywhere, but because we haven't been able to grow up until now, right, that capability has been limited that was given to COCOM commanders. So biggest piece coming out of this, with more soldiers being in the units and units being able to operate faster and get out the door to these different COCOMs to support the COCOM commander, your defense probably get used in a lot more places than it has been already. And Sergeant Major Macri has spoken on that before. With the fact that we got all these new folks that are coming in here, which means the air defense is going to be spread out to some other places too, right? So that the coverage and what the COCOM commanders are asking for is actually given to them. Over.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Amber, just to jump in on that, right? So another thing that we're kind of seeing, especially with air defense, right, and all this new equipment and new capability, right? I mean, it's not just air defense talking it, right? So you got the Chief of Staff of the Army basically wanting to, speed up, IBCS equipping and trying to move all of those things to the left, right, to speed up how fast we get this equipment, right? And so, when you look at kind of the effects that the threat, our enemy, our adversaries, and the effect it's having on air defense specifically, if you're paying attention in the news there, it's really easy to see why air defense is important. It's causing, there to be, a rush, right? So they're trying to start fielding IBCS way earlier than it was planned to be fielded, right? And moving some of these other programs up. So it's,
Okay.
yeah, so.
Okay, great. I did have a question about, like with the new people coming in and it was great that we met the sessions for the year, and all the 14 uniform that are coming in from this FSPC program. Has that made an impact on the school, having all these new students here and, getting them through training?
Yeah, so it has. I won't get into the process of how we get equipment and instructors here in at the schoolhouse or in TRADOC. But basically, because of the amount of soldiers who have signed up to be air defenders, and because of the growth, the projected amount of people who were supposed to come through here was more than, it was a higher projection, but we weren't kind of given the resources to be able to teach that many. So it's been tough, right? We're not able to put people through as soon as they graduate basic. So we have hold unders here, and so it's getting tougher. But what's happening is, I think next year we're going to get plussed up on instructors, and we're trying to, we just brought some equipment up and from maintenance stuff, and so we're trying our best to kind of fix that, but it is hard, Amber. It's one of those things where it's a good thing that air defense is so popular right now and everyone wants to come in, but it's also, for the training side of the house, it's a double-edged sword, because now you have people in AIT who have to wait a few months before they can start class.
Okay, great. So, do y'all have anything that y'all want to add about, like, maybe some good news stories that's coming out of all of these people that were getting into the 14 uniform program, and not just that, but just people who want to be air defenders? Like, you want to speak on like how our future's going to is looking brighter?
From today, I just did an AIT in brief this morning to 120 of the 14 uniform soldiers, some of which came through, the majority of which came through FSPC, and then there was a few that came out of local recruiting stations. But countless individuals came up to me today and they're like, well, I joined on the buddy program and I wanted, I got air defense, and then, I explained it to my friend what air defense was, and they were interested in it, and now they're sitting here in this formation, which to me is a pretty cool thing, right? You get joined with somebody from back home, right, that really well. It makes the, obviously the environment a little bit more comfortable for you. And these folks, if they're more comfortable here, right, they learn, they grasp knowledge a lot faster, they retain knowledge a lot faster. And that's exactly what we need as far as the soldiers in the air defense force, right? We need some pretty smart individuals operating all of these new weapon systems that are coming out.
Okay, great. See, that's awesome. So did you kind of go through the same thing whenever you were in Germany, Sergeant Major Macri?
As far as the reception of them and what's going on, like here's what I'll tell you. Like for me, that what I've noticed, and a lot of people think it's a down, like it's a downfall of the branch, is the deployments, right? Like yes, the op tempo is high, we deploy a lot, but the soldiers love doing their job, right? So our retention isn't as bad as people think it is, because you actually, you have a meaning, right? We are doing our mission 24/7, 365. Like we're out there. I mean, we're out there right now crushing it in Central Command, actually doing our job. So when people start to feel like they add value, right, to the Army, defending our country, defending our allies and partners, they get motivated, Amber. Like, it's not like, so even in Europe, like when we started, with the Eastern flank there, soldiers are rotating. We didn't really have any relief until, we were able to get some help from 32nd. And Sergeant Major Andrakowicz, his unit, half of that unit, his battalion was, I think half, came over and helped us. So he was over there too in Europe. So But the soldiers love doing air defense, Amber. Initially, sitting in AIT and stuff, of course, it's not the same, right? You're learning. So you're in a school environment. But the moment they get out there and deploy, they enjoy being, air defenders. The lieutenants, the same thing. They can't wait. The ones that graduate BOLIC, they know they're going out there and they're going to deploy and do their job. So that makes a big difference, Amber. Our guys aren't just sitting around, for years at a time, doing maintenance and, going to the field, right? We go to the field for a reason. There's a purpose behind it, because we know the end state is going out there to defend, all of our allies, partners in the joint force. So.
Okay. And everything that I've heard, we've had these conversations before and stuff that we've talked about. Really, I just feel like it's a good time to try to get into air defense if you're initially getting into the Army. And it's just the branch that will be doing things in 10 years from now that a lot of the other branches are not going to have the opportunity to do. So I think it is an exciting time for the branch. But also, I wanted you to kind of elaborate on what y'all have done. I know you've done a lot of these doctrinal changes for the last, couple of years now. If you can just kind of talk on hey, this is what we've done so that we can get to this point for our FY 30 goal, and kind of explain some of that, Sergeant Major.
Yeah, so doctrine-wise, the Commandant, Colonel Hinkie, the doctrine-wise and training, as far as doctrine goes, and putting out ATPs and the FMs and things like that. So they are, along working with .D, we have the amount of progress we have made in creating these new doctrine based off of all the new things and the new kind of tactics, techniques, and procedures that we're going to implement, right? Integrating back into maneuver forces, using counter UAS or counter small UAS systems, and how we're going to fight those, right? Composite battalion, and what does that mean for the future of air missile defense? And writing the doctrine on that, we have made a huge leap forward on that, and the speed at which we're doing it, staffing it, and being able to produce it and getting out. So the counter UAS doctrine is out. The training support packages for all of the centers of excellence and any unit that's out there, or post camp or fort that's out there that needs to know how to set up counter UAS training, what to train. All of that stuff has been pushed out for counter UAS. The DIVAD gunnery tables have been pushed out. The IBCS Patriot gunnery tables and the doctrine for that has been pushed out. So we're already moving forward on, or has been staffed and is going to be published. So we're already moving forward on a lot of these things when it comes to the doctrine piece of it. So those are the steps we're taking in order to try to get things out there. But I will kind of, tell you what the Commandant says, right? Because we're moving so fast when it comes to capabilities, the doctrine is the starting point. We're going to give you something doctrine-wise, then we need you to tell us how to complete that doctrine, because the people here at Fort Sill aren't on these new pieces of equipment. So the feedback from the force is the most important thing we can get, right? And so you'll see people from .D or the Army Capability Management Office out there when soldiers are fielding new pieces of equipment to try to write down like tactic, techniques, and procedures, like what are the things for maintenance, right? So that we can put that stuff in doctrine and lesson plans. But the truth is the force is going to have to feed us, because they're going to get the equipment before the training base is going to get the equipment. Does that make sense? So it is a symbiotic relationship where we're trying to provide you doctrine, but that doctrine is going to be just a starting point. We're going to talk about the concepts of integration into maneuver forces, and we're going to talk about the concept of composite battalions and how to fight them. But the actual TTPs and how to do it is going to have to come back from the force, and that's the important part that I think, for a while has been lost, because I think, the operational force thinks that TRADOC owes them something, and TRADOC is like, well, we need something from you, and I think there's been a little bit of a disconnect I think a lot of it is because the branch itself is so busy. People aren't thinking about that. But I think the message is getting out there. And the second part is bringing the right talent here, right? So, we've changed DAPAM 625, which is another change, right, for the enlisted career development, right? We put a lot of time, about a year into that, to look at that. And we've made some assignments here at Fort Sill, nominative assignments, because we need the best and brightest here writing doctrine. We need the best and brightest teaching our students. We need the best and brightest teaching our NCOs, right, and being master gunner instructors. So, a lot of times, when you looked at some of those broadening assignments, they were just all labeled in one big clump, and soldiers didn't know which ones were more important than others. Well, we tried to eliminate the ambiguity in that and say, hey, here is specifically what the branch needs you to do, right? When it comes to developing and what the branch is going to need you. So bringing the right talent here has also helped us implement some of these things in order to move forward and be able to get some of these things out there. And again, 625 has changed. I will tell you, anyone listening, do not Google DAPAM 625. You need to go to the Army G1 website and look up and then search DAPAM 625, because if you Google it, you're going to get the 2019 version, and it is very old, and it's not going to guide you in the right direction. So, I don't know. I think there was some other parts of your question, Amber, that I probably can answer, but you probably had to repeat it for me.
Well, just the other part of that was, will the length it takes to train and promote keep up with the growth of the branch? But you kind of touched on that about, yes, as long as we keep getting air defenders in, we're going to be able to keep promoting the air defenders.
No, so promotions so the good thing about the Army is if we need more sergeants, staff sergeants, sergeant first classes, and master sergeants, we can promote. So the promotion piece will probably speed up for most of the branch, to be honest, as we grow, right? Because you're going to need more leaders in positions. The training is being developed now. I think that if I can tell you, when we talk about transformation and contact, a lot of people think it's more about the material and the equipment, but TRADOC and our branch specifically, along with the Department of Training and Doctrine and the schoolhouse, are looking at transforming how we teach and what we can teach, and keeping up with the pace at which we're fielding equipment and formations. So one of the things we're looking at is called the most viable product. So what we're doing is a lot of equipment our soldiers are using aren't even program of record yet. And so I won't get into the details of the normal process of how we create program of instruction and lesson plans, but it's a longer process than what people think in order to get done. And a lot of times you can't even initiate training plans and lesson plans until something is past a certain milestone of the Army saying, yes, we will buy this many and this will be the system we chose. But now with the fact that we're fielding equipment and we're putting equipment in soldiers' hands, and we need to start training these things, these new, what IFPC is, integrated fire protection capability, and what composite battalions are going to look like, and all the counter UAS capabilities that we're fielding, the Air Defense Force, and also the Army as a whole, soldier common and unit common equipment. We're actually going to take some of these products that the product developer makes, and we're going to use those and create lesson plans and start integrating those into ALC, or Army Leader, Advanced Leader Course, Senior Leader Course. We're going to integrate those into Master Gunner programs. We're going to start using some of that for AIT. So, for instance, the DIVAD and the Sergeant Stout, the maneuver SHORAD capability, is going to start being taught for 14 papas in fiscal year 26. So a year from now, we will start teaching that in AIT. And so we will start getting all those things into AIT and into our professional military education a lot faster, and be able to start teaching lessons a lot faster. So that's kind of what we're doing for the training piece, and the promotion piece is going to keep up. So if we need people to be promoted, then people will get promoted. That's the good thing about the Army, is we can promote as many as we need at the moment we need it. So I wouldn't worry about the promotion piece. We just have to have people in the branch to promote. So hence back to the 14 uniform. So we're putting things in place to set the branch up for success in the next 3 to 5 years.
Do we know, if we're going to be able to get all of these people through and then they're out there and they're in these settings doing their thing by that time? Is that the goal mark, or is the goal mark still the 2027?
Getting people through AIT, that's going to be a nonstop mission, Amber. Like what we're doing now and the throughput we're seeing, I think it's going to last for a long time, right? Okay. So the goal for us is to try to get a little bit more equipment, get some more instructors, which the Army is going to help us with, right? They've approved some growth for instructors in 26. So, we'll start teaching Sergeant Stout in 26, the Striker variant for the short range air defense vehicle. So, I don't want to say that we're going to catch up, because I think the throughput we're seeing now is going to be the norm. And the reality is, if you look at what's happening in the world, right, the news is helping us market air defense, right? When they're saying, some of these systems are, engaging threats and protecting, important assets, I think we're going to remain high up on, people's list for what jobs they want to do. And then I think the throughput's going to stay heavy, Amber. I wouldn't put a date on it because it's a constant mission, at least in my eyes.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to switch the focus a little bit. It says one of the questions is there's a choke point on leadership opportunities with 14 hotels. And it also asked about the composite formations. Would that open up opportunities for 14 hotel? So can you speak on that a little bit? Like what does that mean for a 14 hotel who's already in?
So 14 hotel historically, right, has most of their leadership positions were in space, right? So, but they did a lot of space operations, doing a lot of space operations. So when Space Force came about and took, and basically said, we'll take over these missions, 14 hotels now came back to Army missions, and there's very few space Army missions that, 14 hotels do. And then you have the Patriot battalions where you have 14 hotels. A lot of leadership positions like platoon sergeant and platoon sergeant really aren't coded for 14 hotels. And so they do lack some leadership positions in our branch right now. The good news for 14 hotels is that right now, and we'll actually right around the new year, our senior leaders are going to decide if the 40 Delta, which is the space MOS, Army Space MOS, if the 40 Delta is going to be approved. If 40 Delta is the space MOS is going to be approved, then the 14 hotels who normally fill those positions, will come back to air defense. So the analysis that we're doing is seeing if, we merge them into one of the other MOSs or split them between two MOSs, or we keep them, because right now with all the new systems, we don't truly know how we're going to fight them, and maybe they need to stay 14 hotels. So there's this analysis happening.
Okay.
But when we build, if we're going to keep 14 hotels and not merge them or merge them into another MOS, if we're going to do that, our job at Okada and here at the Commandant's office, our job is to make sure that we build upward progression when we start to build some of these units, right? So that we have, sergeant first class or 40 level slots that are, considered key development positions for them. And that's one of the complaints, that they have is they get to sergeant first class and it's very hard for them to move up because there's nothing higher than that. And there's only a few sergeant first class positions. So not a lot of them get up there to that level. And so So we have to do the analysis if we're going to keep the 14 hotel. If we're going to merge them, then, they'll fall into the same promotion period as whatever MOSs we merge them into, which, is healthy. So, that wouldn't change that MOS's promotion rate. It would probably just stay the same. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But the big decision right now that we're waiting on is if 40 Delta is going to become an MOS. And then we can make a decision on 14 hotels. So, I'm asking the 14 hotels just to be a little more patient till after the new year. Because if we do something prior to that 40 Delta MOS getting approved, then we've tied our hands. But, and now we have no options because 14 hotels might still have to pull that space mission. So.
Okay, I see. All right, well, I guess we can kind of update that as we go along because we're going to be doing a lot more of these, so we can kind of follow through with it whenever we get due on our next quarter. Thanks for tuning in to episode 10 of the Today's Air Defenders podcast. I'm your host, Amber Osei. Until next time, take care and stay inspired.